Welcome back to another episode of the Tenacious Be podcast. In our ongoing series, Tune Out, Turn On, and Drop In, where we are tuning out the noise of the world, turning on our inner world, and dropping in through the transformative power of psychedelics in a therapeutic setting. And today I am incredibly excited to be joined by a very special guest, Maria Nazdraven. Now, Maria is the mind behind Begin Again, a platform dedicated to fostering new beginnings and deep personal growth through integrative practices and mindful exploration. Her work touches on the profound capacity for all of us to heal, inspire, and transform, helping individuals reframe their lives and begin again with a fresh perspective. Whilst Maria's journey with Begin Again initially embraced the therapeutic potential of psychedelics, she has since transitioned more towards practices rooted in dreamwork and transpersonal psychology, focusing on the expansive potential of the mind and consciousness beyond substances. Maria brings a wealth of experience in guiding individuals through the healing process, and today we'll be diving deep into her personal journey, her perspectives on the therapeutic value of psychedelics, and how we can begin to integrate these experiences for lasting change. But we'll also be diving into the evolution of her work and the reasons behind her shift away from psychedelics, and how dreamwork and transpersonal approaches can open up new dimensions of healing and transformation. Maria, it is such a pleasure to have you with us today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ashley. Thanks for having me. And thank you so much for that really, really lovely introduction.
Well, I would love to tell people a little bit more about how I first found you. Now, I can't remember exactly what website it was, but it was around 2020. And I read an article that you wrote about your own sort of healing transformation through the use of psychedelics and how that ignited a desire to really dive into that and begin to get certified in psychology with the view to potentially moving towards becoming a psychedelic therapist. So that was 4 years ago. And then when I knew that I was going to be doing this series, I thought, I'm gonna contact her and see if she's up for coming on the podcast. And so when we had a conversation a couple of months ago, it was really interesting how you mentioned that through various reasons, which we'll discuss, you've moved away from psychedelics and more into dream work, which is quite psychedelic in itself,
Absolutely.
and transpersonal psychology. So I thought, you know what, this is actually going to be really good because, we're not just looking at the positive aspects of psychedelic therapy, but also, things that people need to look out for, the pitfalls, and hopefully we can have a really good discussion so that the listener really is armed with a lot of information so that they can make a more well-rounded choice for them personally. So I would love to hear. Now, we were just speaking off camera a moment ago about your previous careers. So I would love to hear a little bit about your life and sort of what led you to psychedelics and your personal experiences with those, and then we'll journey more into why you've moved away and what you're doing now.
Yeah, sure. Well, I used to be in advertising
Yeah.
for quite a bit of time, maybe about 10 years. That was my first career. I was a creative, a writer, and I really enjoyed that for the majority of the time. It was fun to create things it was also really stressful. And I think towards the end of that, I was really sensing the lack of soul in my
Yeah.
work, which was odd because I was an atheist, so I didn't believe in souls. But I also felt like my work was soulless and really meaningless.
Yeah.
And in the last few years, I was kind of trying to lie to myself about, I can do this just for money and it allows me to have experiences and da da da. But it just got to a point where my suffering was too much, I think. And I was already in therapy at the time. And I was led to psychedelics by my partner at the time, who was into them recreationally, and I was not into that at all. I was a very good girl. I still am to some degree. Um, but I was really keen to start working on my trauma because I was becoming aware. I was in my late 20s. I definitely hold trauma in my body. I was reading about Bessel van der Kolk's work and Peter Levine. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, this is something that I need to look at. And I was already interested in psychology at the time. So I went into therapeutic journeys thinking I'm gonna do trauma work. And I don't know if I had that much of that because most of my journeys were mystical and something I would have never expected. I didn't want them. I didn't want to
Yeah.
have mystical experiences. I was an atheist. I was happy with my materialist version of
Yeah.
the world. And it was kind of brutal to, I think within 2 months, my whole worldview changed.
Wow.
And yeah, it was really intense. Um,
What can you share which plant medicines you were using?
I always kind of work with mushrooms. I've
Right.
worked with acid a little bit, but that thing that more in a recreational way. And MDMA has been helpful for me, but mushrooms are kind of I call them my buddies.
Right.
That's the
Right.
energy I get from them.
Yes. Yes. Amazing. Yeah, it's interesting. I I was also interested in going into advertising back when I was at university and trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my career. And I thought the same thing. I thought, this is something I can make money at and be creative. And I ended up going into radio instead. But yeah, as time has gone on, I thought, God, I'm glad I didn't go into that because and I it's probably a conversation we could probably have a whole podcast just on that. It's got to be very difficult for creative people to find themselves in this industry that, as you say, is not it doesn't foster a lot of healthy, natural, sort of positive aspects of human psychology. It's sort of looking at ways to sort of warp people to buy certain products. So yeah, I could see where that was a initially an interest, but then a disconnect.
Yeah, and I was lucky to be in fairly decent agencies, especially towards my career, where the the projects that we were working on, the campaigns, were actually meant to be things that make the world better because it was a bit of a trend. And I lied to myself for a few years that I'm actually contributing to making the world a better place. But once you looked deeper into those specific campaigns, you could see that the interest, it's greenwashing, the interest is still to make more money for investors. The positive impact is so small that it's almost insignificant. And at that point, I was just like, I can't be in this anymore. I just can't do this.
Yeah, yeah. So so then you had your psychedelic experiences. You had a complete I love how, there is a saying with these healing psychedelics that you don't always get what you want, but you get you get what you need. So yeah, so you weren't planning on suddenly becoming connected to the divine and spiritual aspects,
God, no.
but it really led you down that path. Amazing.
It was amazing. And it was absolutely 100% what I needed because my version, the way I imagine things, was still from an ego perspective. I just want to get rid of some of my trauma
Yeah.
so I can continue to have a career and a relationship and not change much as a person. And, I still remember one of those journeys I saw at one point. I had non-dual experiences, which were wonderful because I was meditating as well. Um, but at one point, I met consciousness or the universe, and I was just in awe. It was, for those of us who've had psychedelics, I think we know how that feels when you contact the source. And I was just floored with respect and awe and joy. And then the universe gave me the finger
I love
and
it.
left me in a void. And that was, I think, my second ever journey and
Wow.
second mystical experience. And I was just sitting there on mushrooms thinking, wow, I met the universe. I met consciousness, and consciousness gave me the finger, told me to fuck off. And I was kind of feeling really sad for myself for a little bit. It's like, I don't matter. And then that I don't matter turned into like the most freeing kind of I don't matter and nothing matters and how special life can be. Um, I really needed those experiences to break out of my rigidity. But yeah, it was, it was brutal to integrate because 2 months to change your worldview like that, it's wild. I couldn't go back to advertising. I remember going back to work every day and just kind of hating it and feeling that misalignment so strongly. And then I had a couple more experiences. I went to a psychedelic retreat a couple months later, and then I had a Kundalini awakening, which I had
Oh,
zero context for,
yeah.
you know. And
Yeah.
all this happening again within 6 months of I was doing yoga, I was doing meditation, but I was doing them in a secular way. And then I have this thing happen to me that blew me away, and it was traumatizing. It was a really, really difficult experience. And I think, all these last 4 years, 5 years actually of retraining have been a way for me to integrate and understand what happened.
Beautiful. And it sounds a bit like, the void and the universe giving you the finger and it sounds a bit, the brain doesn't like paradoxes. We don't like things meaning everything and nothing at the same time. And it sounds kind of like that's where you were, and embracing the paradox of, life is an existential joy, but it's also meaningless at the same time. And but it's meaningful, and yeah, this non-dual awareness is both beautiful and a lot to take on board in one go.
Yeah. And in addition to the meaningfulness, I think what the psychedelics journeys showed me was it's humorous. And
Yeah.
Alan Watts writes about this as well. There's something comedic about life, and there's something comedic about meeting consciousness, and consciousness kind of gives you the finger and leaves you, and I all my other experiences have had so much humor in them, which is I think especially when you're processing big things or big trauma, and then you can laugh about it. It's so beautiful, and I think it is for me. I mean, I wonder how much it's biased on my own kind of makeup, psychological makeup, that humor is at the center of it. But I know a lot of people have had an experience of kind of maybe that resonates with you as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And not just in that sort of respect, but also just in life in general. It's so we have to be able to laugh at the ridiculousness of life, and it is such an important aspect. And so many of us, it's a huge thing that I mention to my clients. I mean, do you have any silliness in your life? Because you really, life is incredibly can be incredibly challenging, and can be incredibly dark. And we also have the light moments, but the silliness kind of breaks through everything. And it's one thing I love about Alan Watts, and also Ram Dass is another one, just the humor aspect of really bringing in, it's a beautiful part of our humanity. And if we want to celebrate our humanity, it's gotta be in there. So yeah, yeah, gosh. Right. So how did you begin to, what was your plan once you sort of were like, okay, this isn't happening here with the advertising. I need to go deeper. Where did you first begin? What were your sort of, did you think you were going to be sort of a psychedelic therapist?
Yeah, I mean, this is what everyone who has their first psychedelic experiences thinks. Oh, I'm cold. I've been Mother Ayahuasca told me to be a shaman, right?
Yes.
Or the mushrooms told me to be a therapist. It wasn't exactly like that, but I will accept that that's something I also did. For me, it was I remember there was a moment where I asked myself, if I didn't have any constraints in this world, what would I choose to do? And what I wanted to do was actually to be a therapist.
Yeah.
because I really enjoyed my therapeutic journey up to at that point. And I thought, okay, I could be a psychedelic therapist. And I started with a year of training by doing small courses here and there, studying mindfulness, studying I studied psychedelic navigation with Psychedelics Today. This was the course that they had at the time. Now, of course, they have a bigger course. But there wasn't anything sort of established at that point for me to study. So I did a bunch of things. And by doing a bunch of things, I realized, oh gosh, this is not enough. Like I need more, and I need to be in a process myself.
Yeah.
And that's why I kind of came upon this training, a transpersonal integrative psychotherapy training that's 4 years. And I'm so glad I did it because it put a lot of things in perspective. First of all, it's been my integration journey, and I think I will still continue to integrate my experiences for a long time. But it's also shown me the depth of this work, whether it's therapeutic work without substances or with substances. This can go really deep, and the depth of understanding the depth of the psyche and the archetypal powers that can come into experiences then gives you it gave me at least a different kind of respect and humility in this work.
Yes, yes. God, you're so right. You are, you've hit the nail on the head there. We are quite, there's a lot going on in there, isn't there? And it almost feels like there's seemingly no end to how deep you can go.
Yeah.
As we were chatting about before I hit record, I was talking about my own journey with San Pedro, which I have at this point, it should be released now on the podcast, my sort of journey there. But um the fact that I didn't really learn anything new, but everything that I thought I already knew on a very deep level, things that I espoused to my clients, I knew them on a much, much deeper, profound level. And it's like that, the peeling, there's so many layers to knowledge, knowing things up here versus knowing things in your heart and
Yeah.
in your body. It is yes, it is not something to take lightly. And we do want to make sure that we are holding space for people in the best way possible, and going through these deep experiences really helps with that. But yeah, so let's as you say, I mean, the work is never done. We're continually integrating, aren't we? So I'm still
Hmm.
integrating things from, my sort of journey started back in 2016 with a holotropic breathwork workshop, which was amazing. I'm still connecting dots from that experience and all my experiences since then. And it's really fascinating. And sometimes I find even a client will be going through something that I'm thinking, oh my God, this relates to something that I'm trying to figure out.
Oh, absolutely. All the time.
The synchronicities are just amazing. They're really special. So when we chatted a couple of months ago, you mentioned seeing some. I think it'll be good for people because I've been discussing all of the positive benefits of psychedelic assisted therapy. I think it's so important that we discuss the dangers out there because it's highly unregulated. I mean, Australia is really sort of um, leading the way in terms of, I think, legalizing it for medicinal purposes, things like MDMA and psilocybin, and the USA also with ketamine.
Hmm.
But again, it's still there. So many people are wanting to go to the jungle and have a shamanic experience, but anybody can set up a business and call themselves a shaman.
Oh, absolutely.
So I don't want to put, I don't want to just fill this with scary stories, but I would love to hear some of the things maybe that you have witnessed that really concerned you. How should people do their due diligence in exploring their consciousness in this way.
Yeah, I hate to have become the person who's like, yeah, are you sure about psychedelics? Because I still have so much love and respect for
Yes.
psychedelics. Um, that hasn't changed for me. But indeed, I think I've seen and I've heard enough to take a step back, which I have been over the last few years from doing the work myself. Just I think my therapeutic training has shown me a lot of things that I wasn't aware of before, and studying psychotherapy, working as a psychotherapist with clients, that's work without a substance, but it can be very deep, it can be very powerful. And I learned about things that I hadn't learned about before in my psychedelic work, things like countertransference,
Mm,
or the potential for the power dynamics that happen between a facilitator or a therapist and the client that exist no matter how much we deny them and we say we will work collaboratively. There are power dynamics involved, and we need to become aware of them. Or things like narcissism, right?
right.
The N words that everyone is kind of afraid to mention these days. It's something that we all have in us. And again, not acknowledging it, not working on it is not going to make us not act in harmful ways towards others. So these were kind of things that I was seeing in facilitators and hearing from people that have been through these experiences. And yeah, it's just made me take a step back. Um, I think when you're someone who has trauma or struggles in life and you hear all these amazing titles and the news about the potential for healing in psychedelics, which is true, and none of this denies the power of psychedelics to heal and offer breakthrough experiences. Um, but I've seen a lot of people come or ask about psychedelics, even to me, come and say, oh, I have these huge expectations. I'm expecting this psychedelic journey to be like those 20 years of therapy that they've read about and to completely break through. And then they have a journey with these high hopes and they get a mild experience, maybe because their ego defenses are really high up, or because they don't really have a strong ego to mediate the experience, or because the facilitator is not really trained properly to support them, and they're really disappointed
Right.
afterwards. And they've also spent a huge amount of money on that experience.
Yeah, yeah. And you are really, you're opening yourself up. One of the things, one of the beautiful things that psychedelics do is they open us. Our openness is becomes very plastic, and we remain
Mm-hmm.
quite open, which is beautiful. You can see a lot of the filters that you've been putting in your life, those kind of tend to drop. But as you say, that leaves you in quite a vulnerable position, and not just in that experience. So yes, you're very vulnerable in that experience. So yes, if you do have a facilitator that has narcissistic tendencies, that really not a good mix there. And but also you're quite open for a good few weeks to a few months afterwards. So if you're going back home and you're in an unhealthy environment, going back into an unhealthy environment, it's going to be it can be very difficult and very troubling. And when I did my ayahuasca journeys, I kind of knew in the back of my mind that everything needed to crumble down, and it did, but I kind of
Oof.
knew that it needed to. So but this is these are things that people do need to be aware of, but as you say, sometimes people think, right, I want to have this big experience, and then it's a bit of a yeah. and
Yeah.
and as we were speaking before recording today, I mentioned how I was discussing with some of the facilitators where I recently was, about the mixture of certain plant medicines. So San Pedro, which I've just experienced, doesn't mix well with cannabis. It doesn't mix well with ayahuasca. It doesn't really mix well with anything. You really want to have
Mm-hmm.
a standalone, but there are so many retreats out there that you see, oh, you do ayahuasca one day and then you do San Pedro the next day, and it's like this. I think that would be a red flag. Multiple
Yeah,
substances on a retreat would probably be a red flag. And I think if you're going to go on a plant medicine journey, speak to someone who you know. And if you don't know if you don't know anyone who can recommend a place, that's where you've just got to do some really deep research, I think, haven't you? Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. And, this could be a really important experience for you. I think it's well worth, if you're going to spend a couple of $1,000 or pounds to go to a retreat, you might as well do your due diligence and see what that retreat is like and what the facilitators are like. And I would say do some kind of therapy or coaching, whatever you're comfortable with, on each side of the experience, just to be prepared. And yeah. And also, I think there's a matter of really digging into and understanding things like, well, I mentioned countertransference earlier. This is not a term that most lay people know unless you go through a therapeutic training, but it's a huge thing. And, in therapy, if it's okay if I just explain very
Yes, please
quickly.
do. Please do.
This happens in all relationships, not just therapy or facilitator-client relationships. Me and you would have this right now. Transference is just purely whatever I transfer onto you from my previous experiences. So I am not seeing you clearly right now because I don't know you very well, but also I might think that you remind me of various people in my life, and I might expect you to behave in that way.
Yeah.
Um, and we do this so much, especially if we haven't done a lot of work on ourselves. We do this a lot, we project. And countertransference, then, this is something that happens for therapists or facilitators, where because of the client's transference and projections onto them as facilitators or therapists, they will have a reaction. So you are tempted sometimes to respond like people in their lives have responded to them. So say someone had a very critical mother who always put them down and was deprived them of affection and kindness. If you're not aware as a facilitator, if you haven't worked on yourself enough and you're not aware of these feelings bubbling up inside you, you could end up doing that to your client and becoming quite critical of them and, putting them down in different ways, obviously not exactly like the mother. But so this is a very harmless, well, it's harmful, but it's not that big of a deal as an example. But think of this in the context of people who've gone through sexual abuse
Yes.
or through other power dynamics. And we know there have been a lot of examples of facilitators crossing these boundaries in the psychedelic work with, especially around sexuality. And it never goes well.
Yes.
Absolutely never.
No, it's never a good idea.
It's never healing. It
Yeah.
never is. It might
No.
feel healing on the spot or a few days after, but it never works out. I've never read or heard of a case where someone said, my therapist breached this trust and, we had a sexual relationship and it worked out the best for both of us.
Yeah. No. No. Yeah, and I was just reading something last night, actually, funnily enough, about I hadn't realized that um now this is I think due to the fact that psychotherapy in general was still being sort of created modern day psych, but that Carl Jung had it's theorized. I don't know if there's any actual proof, but a couple of his patients he had a sexual relationship with.
Oh, yes, this is the shadow of Carl Jung that, yeah, I'm not comfortable looking at. I'm aware of it. It makes me uncomfortable because
Yeah.
I hold him in very high regard.
Yes.
But there is a huge shadow in psychotherapy already, and there is a huge shadow in psychedelic therapy. And it comes from people not doing enough of their own personal work. And like I did initially, I had 5 journeys or 6 journeys, and I thought I'm going to be a therapist. Thank God I was humbled enough by these experiences to realize this is going to be a very long-term training for me.
Yeah.
Not even a 4-year experience, it's going to be much longer. But a lot of people don't feel that. A lot of people go, have 1, 2 experiences. They've seen God. They feel like they're chosen because that is what the experience is like. And they don't have the context because they're not supported or they haven't understood this, that that's a narcissistic point there. You feel chosen. You are chosen. We're all chosen. But in that moment, it feels like, well, I'm the most chosen. I'm
Yeah.
more chosen than you here. Right.
And
And
yeah,
yeah.
and it's not a yeah, it is rooted in wanting to help, isn't it? And that's where we can begin to kid ourselves basically, and not recognizing the narcissistic aspect of that feeling. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's rooted in wanting to help, but I
Yes.
think we sometimes have to be honest that, we're complex creatures and we have many parts, and there might be a part that's very honest about helping, but there are parts that want to feel special. There are parts that want to feel like they have power because we've never had power in our lives. There are parts that want fame and want money and would like to be the kind of person who says, I'm a shaman, and want to dress a certain way. I think this work takes so much honesty and being brutally honest with ourselves that, again, we all, this is my opinion. I'm not gonna say this is necessarily the theory, but I really believe that we all have narcissistic tendencies because it's part of our development. And some
Yeah.
of us don't get to work through that. And we still have these tendencies in adult life, and it's okay. But being aware of them, Chacruna Institute did a really brilliant piece, I think earlier this year, if I remember it right, or last year. It was a podcast about abuse and narcissistic abuse in facilitators in the psychedelic space. And when I listened, I was like, thank God, finally someone is talking about this and naming it as
Yeah.
what it is.
Yes. Sorry, who was that again? Whose
I,
podcast
I,
was it?
I think it was
Tracuna.
Chacruna Institute. Yeah.
Ah, excellent. Right. I will check that out. Um yeah, it's and I like how you are talking about parts, because parts work and internal family systems and active imagination and all of the recognizing the different facets that make up our personality. We are not just one thing. We are a multitude of different parts, and that is, I think, a really beautiful way of beginning to work on yourself, trying to identify the parts within. And so I would love to hear about your dream work,
Mhm.
especially because I'm fascinated by dreams. I've been starting my own little I hadn't been very good at keeping a regular dream journal until sort of the beginning of the summer, and it has been transformative. And I've just been reading, whilst I was away, I started reading Man and His Symbols by
Mhm.
the introduction is by Carl Jung, but then the rest of it, it's all based on Jung's work, but it's a multitude of authors. So I would love to hear all about your dream work and what are you doing? You've got a group, don't you?
Yeah.
And how can people interact with you this way?
I love that book that you mentioned. I think that's a great
Yeah.
book for anyone who's interested in Jung because it's a brilliant introduction to Jungians and his work. Psychedelics brought me to Dreamwork. For a lot of what I have and what I'm interested in today is due to psychedelics. Even Carl Jung's work, I had those experiences first, and then I read his work, and that helped me contextualize the experiences.
Yes.
Um, so dreams, I didn't really pay attention to dreams for a long time, but when I was going through my spiritual emergency, I started working with a psychedelic therapist who was at the time on the Imperial trials here in London. So she was really interested and well versed in psychedelics, but also in therapy. And she started asking me about dreams for the first time. And I had been doing therapy for a few years and we didn't talk about dreams, but she was interested. And I shared a dream. And I still remember it was a real awakening moment where I shared the dream thinking, whatever, it's just a dream. And she used this really interesting Gestalt technique on me where you basically tell the dream through the perspective of different characters in the dream.
Right.
And it's an exercise in, I suppose, empathy in some way and, theory of mind. But yeah, she asked me to tell from a different character, then from the walls, the perspective of the walls in the room, and da-da-da. And this exercise showed me so much about myself. And I understood so much from that dream that it just blew my mind. And from then on, I think I started keeping a dream journal. And, you know, I think they're not either or, psychedelics or dream work. Psychedelics for me are still a place for mystical experience, connecting to source and understanding non-dual kind of truths. Dreams had been a place to contextualize my life experience
Yes.
and understand that deeper. And at the time, they showed me so much about how I was living and everything I was repressing and not
Yes.
looking at. Obviously, my dream practice has changed, and I've had some really mystical, incredible experiences in dreams. And, this is what Jung called big dreams. We all have them.
Yes.
Um, and kind of cultivating this ongoing dream practice made me want to go less to psychedelics because you're tripping every night, right?
Absolutely.
So you have 5 to 7 dreams every night. You might remember one or two of them. That's plenty of material to work with.
Yes, yes. And for people out there that are interested, you meet a lot of people who say they don't dream or they don't remember their dreams. And normally I say to people, the dreams you do remember, or as you're going to sleep that night, just telling yourself, I'm going to remember my dreams. I mean,
Exactly.
start to play little, yeah. What are your sort of recommendations for people who want to dream more? And then we can talk about maybe some lucid dreaming as well.
Mhm. So for dreaming more, I mean, everyone dreams. It's more approach it with the same intention you would approach a psychedelic experience. You don't go into a psychedelic experience with no intention, just whatever. I've just spent 20 hours on my iPhone and on Instagram, and then I'm gonna have some mushrooms. You do have intention.
Yeah.
So it's the same way. Make sure you have a good sleep ritual, take some time before going to sleep, reading, doing gentle stretching or meditating. Set the intention that you want to remember your dream. And if you set that intention, you will remember a dream. Maybe not the first night, but it will happen because the unconscious wants to be known.
Yes, yes, absolutely, absolutely. And that's so much about, I think, integrating into wholeness, bringing the
Mhm.
unconscious into conscious awareness. There is, yeah, and it's so important to not take dreams literally. They are, they are
Yes.
not. Uh, and there's some really, I mean, there's a great book out there by Robert Johnson called Inner
Mhm.
Work, Using Dreams and Active Imagination. That was really transformative for me. I read that last year.
A great
Um,
book.
oh, it's so good. It's so good. And yeah, and the active imagination aspect, having a bit of a waking dream and playing
Mhm.
around with that is also and just so fascinating. And now you have on Begin Again, you have a dream group that people can join. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's called Dreamwork Circle. It's been going on for over a year now. And I started it because again, I psychedelics open us to the imaginal realm, to the unconscious. Dreams do that every night. And I wanted to help people find their way with their own dreams because okay, it might be hard to understand your dreams because they're symbolic. We're all very rational, logical thinkers, and if you approach a dream like that, you won't understand it.
Yeah.
um, but it takes very little time actually to we all have the capacity, right, to understand our dreams, to interpret them, and to just give people a context for, we do classes every month, so we understand, we learn more about how to work symbolically, but also non-symbolically, non-interpretatively with dreams, which is really fun actually. To not go into, okay, this is naming animus, anima, all these Jungian terms. So we're playing with intellectual and non-intellectual aspects to approaches to dream work. And we do dream circles every week. And I think it's maximum 10 people, and they've been going strong for all this time. The bonds that happen in a dream group are incredible
Yeah.
because imagine this, you're not chatting about your daily life, you're chatting about your dream life, which is really honest. So people get to know each other at this very deep level, and they remember each other's dreams, and they're like, oh, the dream you have now reminded me of this dream you had 6 months ago about ta ta ta. And it's mind-blowing. It's beautiful to watch.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
It's such a rich experience, and I recommend to anyone, talk about your dreams to your friends, and otherwise join a dream group and you can work even deeper. But sharing your dreams, one of the theories, there are many theories about the functions of dreams. No one can say that this is the one function, but one of them is to build empathy and strengthen our social connections. Because most of our
Interesting.
dreams, yeah, well, most of our dreams are based on relationships. We dream about relationships and people in our lives. So there is something in there. And then we feel compelled, right, to go, oh, I had a dream about you last night. You were riding an elephant and then you ate this huge pizza and whatever. And we share a funny dream and that bonds us with the other person.
That makes total sense because I mean, yeah, and just in not just in dreams, but in everything, our outer world is a reflection of our inner world, and our inner
Hmm.
world is and vice versa. So yes, bringing that inner world and sharing it with somebody else, is I can totally see that would be absolutely an aspect of helping to really bond us with the people in our life. I love that. I love that. And so,
And the only
uh,
other thing I was going to say about dreams and
yeah,
related to psychedelics and therapy, there's something incredible about dreams where you start a process of healing. So even when you start a psychedelic retreat or you think about joining a psychedelic retreat or you start therapy, they're called diagnostic dreams. And the dreams you have around the time are incredibly powerful and they usually teach you about what the work is about. So this is how I work as a therapist. I always ask a new client, did you have any dreams last night or the few nights before starting? And those dreams, I would say almost 100% of the time, tell me what our work is going to be about.
yes, I love that. I love that. And do you know what? I've started to ask clients for a dream scenario that they can remember. And then I go into ChatGPT and I get it to write me a short hypnotic bedtime story
Mm.
based with that in that same setting, but utilizing aspects of that story to move towards our goals and
Ah.
therapy. So it's just a nice little way of using that landscape that's already there and shifting it towards what we're working on. So people can find you on Substack, Begin Again.
Hmm.
Are
Yes.
there any other ways that people can connect with you?
So my Substack is beginagain.substack.com. That's where I write essays and all sorts of resources on psychedelics, dreamwork, psychotherapy. I also have a website, beginagain.space, and that's where Dreamwork Circle also is. If anyone is interested in joining Dreamwork Circle, I would suggest get in touch with me because it is a closed group. Everyone there is in therapy. There are kind of prerequisites to being in it because dream work is really deep. It's kind of like psychedelic work. So to keep people safe, it's good to be in some sort of therapy or coaching or container.
Yes. Yes.
Um, and I'm on Instagram because everyone is, I suppose.
Excellent, excellent, good stuff. Well, I think it's time now to get down to business and cultivate the witness. This is the section of the show where we do either a guided meditation or yoga nidra or a guided hypnosis. I haven't done a hypnosis one yet, but I'm sure that'll come up. These are all very hypnotic, anyway. I mean, anytime we do meditation or yoga nidra or hypnosis, we're in the theta brainwave state, which is that lovely state of combining deep focus with deep rest. So yeah, anytime we close our eyes and intentionally stay awake, that's a really good way of thinking about it. We close our eyes to relax, and then we stay awake to drop inwards. So if anybody is driving or operating heavy machinery right now, make sure to pause the recording until you can come back into stillness. So everybody just take a moment and just settle in and find a posture that is comfortable, allowing yourself to relax, but also to stay alert. And just Gently bring your attention to your breath. And with eyes gently closed, notice the breath as it flows in and out, with no need to change or control it. Just simply feel the air entering through your nostrils and then gently leaving the body. And let yourself become fully present with the breath. Just observing each inhale and exhale as it happens. In this moment, there's nothing to do. You are simply resting in awareness, allowing things to be as they are. And as you continue to breathe naturally, let's expand our awareness to include the mind itself. And notice thoughts as they arise, without trying to push them away or cling to them. Thoughts come and go like clouds in the sky. They form, shift, and dissolve, all within the same space of awareness. And become aware that behind every thought, sensation, or feeling, there is a vast, clear space of awareness. This is where thoughts appear and where they pass away. But this space, this awareness, remains constant and open. And you are resting in that awareness now. Simply noticing the play of thoughts and perceptions as they rise and fall. And as we go deeper, reflect on the nature of your mind and the realm of dreams. Just as thoughts appear spontaneously, dreams also arise from within you. They are symbols, images, and experiences that emerge without effort. And in dreams, much like in life, you are both the experiencer and the creator. Imagine now that you are entering a dreamlike space. This is the landscape of your inner world, where images and memories float up from the depths of your consciousness. In this space, you are fully conscious, aware of the dream as it unfolds. There is no separation between the dream and the awareness observing it. Now, I want you to imagine standing beside a vast and still lake. This lake with its perfectly calm surface, reflects everything around it. The sky above, the trees surrounding you, and the colors of the setting sun all appear clearly in the water. But most importantly, this lake also reflects your inner world, your thoughts, feelings, and dreams. As you stand there gazing at this lake, feel the quietness, the serenity. The lake represents your awareness, always calm, always present, even when the ripples of thought and experience pass across its surface. And as you take a moment to feel the stillness of this lake, watch as any thoughts or feelings you have arise like small ripples on the water, moving gently across the surface, but never disturbing the lake's depth. And as you imagine walking slowly around this lake, the landscape changes slightly with each step. Different images or symbols might appear, perhaps drawn from your memories or from your dreams. These are the expressions of your deeper self, emerging effortlessly, as they always do. As you witness these symbols and images, there's no need to try and change them. Just allow them to arise as ripples on the lake, passing through your awareness. You are both the dreamer and the dream, effortlessly observing the unfolding of your mind. Your inner wisdom is here with you. Take a moment to feel that clarity now. In this space, all dreams, all thoughts, and all experiences are part of the larger landscape of your consciousness. And you can observe them, allow them to be, and know that deeper wisdom is always present, unfolding in its own time. And let this lake remind you of your capacity to always be able to begin again, to reset, to reflect, and move forward with clarity. Whether you're standing before a challenge or simply reflecting on your day, let the lake of awareness within you allow you to receive, reflect, and renew. and allow yourself to begin again with each breath, with each moment. There's no need to rush. There's no need to grasp. In this reflective space, trust that insight and understanding will arise and unfold in their own time. There's nothing you need to force. Simply resting in the wisdom of your being. And just gently begin to bring awareness back to your body. Notice the steady rhythm of your breath. And just as you can begin again with each breath, you can carry this practice with you, knowing that each moment holds the potential for renewal and clarity. And there's no need to hold on to any special insight or experience from this meditation. You can simply trust that whatever clarity or peace has arisen will continue to unfold naturally. And the beautiful knowledge that with each breath, we can always begin again. And whenever you're ready, you can feel free to have a nice stretch and gently open your eyes. Namaste. Oh, Maria.
That was a lovely meditation. Thank you, Ashley.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us today. What a beautiful conversation. I'm really, really honored that you gave of yourself today and your time. Thank you so much.
It was my pleasure, and thank you for the conversation as well. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Thank you. Take care.
Bye, Ashley.
Bye.
If I could sing or play an instrument for you, I would sing and play an instrument for you. If I could dance for you, I would dance for you. If I could paint for you, I would paint for you. But my thing is words. But the problem about words is that you may listen to them.
And that would be a mistake.